How you get like that? How the whole team go flex like? How the whole phone take a jet like? How the thing go flex like? How you get like that? How the whole team go flex like that? How you fly a jet like that? How you be on the road when the feds like that? And the feds go hard, so we gotta hit the gas when we see them cars. Now we can't go back, won't see them bars. Locked in the gym, now we them stars. Now we locked.
Hey yo, what up, squad? Hey man, welcome back to HOODROK Entertainment, bro. Realest, dopest, most active reaction channel on YouTube. Yo, we're tapping in, we're doing something different. So later on tonight, bro, I'm gonna be finishing off the World Without Humans documentary that I've been doing. But I thought I'll tap into this one quickly, as I only just come across this. I've never seen this before, bro. So this is about my people. I'm a Polynesian, right? I'm Polynesian Nigerian, or Polynesian African. So the Polynesians are made up of, all the island people in the Pacific. The New Zealanders, the Samoans, the Tongans, you know what I mean? So specifically the Māori from New Zealand. So I'm a Māori from New Zealand. We're the natives of New Zealand. And then you've got our cousins, right? The Tongans, the Fijians, the Samoans, the Hawaiians, the Niueans, the Rarotongans, you know what I mean? The Easter Islanders. We're all Polynesians. And this is about the Polynesian navigators. Now, for all my Scandinavians out there, I know y'all like to think the Vikings are the best sea navigators. No, they were not, bro. The Vikings were land huggers, man. They were people that hugged the coastline because they were raiders, right? They raided towns and villages along coastlines and shit. They never went across big waters like, I'm guessing this is going to explain to us. Let's just check this out, yo. Hit that notification bell, tap that like button, subscribe, click up, squad up, tap in, my niggas, alright? There's a whole bunch of geography, a whole bunch of comedy, there's a whole bunch of sports. There's over 2,500 hip-hop reactions on my channel. Everything's in playlists, so it's easy to navigate, bro. You'll see a geography playlist and history playlist pop up at the end. Run the numbers up on that, yo. Alright, let's get into this.
This is the Pacific Ocean. It covers over a third of the Earth's surface and is large.
A third of the Earth's surface. And who navigated that Pacific Ocean, bruh? Who colonized it? Who navigated that? Yeah, that's right, my niggas, right here. That's why I mean, the Vikings are not the best sea navigators in the history of the world. We are, bruh.
This is the Pacific Ocean. It covers over a third of the Earth's surface and is larger than all the other land masses in the world combined.
Facts.
This 160 million square kilometer expanse is dotted with thousands of tiny islands. Captain
that
Cook,
we navigated, my nigga,
in the 17th century, found them all inhabited. And these people shared languages, cultures, and a love of navigation. Spread thousands of miles across open ocean, the Polynesians are history's greatest navigators. But could they have...
Look what it says! Hear that, Vikings? We're number one, bro. Yo, I ain't dissing no Scandinavians because I love my Viking brothers. But let's not miss the facts here, bro. Let's not miss the facts. We navigated and colonized a third of the world. Okay.
The Polynesians are history's greatest navigators. But could they have discovered the Americas before Columbus?
Now, bro, I learned about this in school. Now, I've been taught that we discovered America before Christopher Columbus did, right? The American Indians were already there, the native Indians, but we discovered it before Christopher Columbus, which is how New Zealand got the sweet potato, right? We call it kumara. Now, when the British came to New Zealand, we already had sweet potato, and they tripped the fuck out because they were like, how do you get sweet potato? Because it's not native to my country. It was only at that time, it was only native to America. So how did we get it? Figure that out.
How is the second most beautiful thing on earth the potato? Key to this.
My nigga, I learned this in school. Let's keep going. I learned this in school, bro.
The Americas before
all New Zealanders. All New Zealanders know this.
The second most beautiful thing on earth, the potato. Key to this story.
The sweet potato.
Let's find out.
That's common knowledge here in New Zealand, bro. Everyone in New Zealand at school got taught that. Like, history, we got taught a different history than what most people would have got taught. We got taught the real history, right? Not the history that the British and the Europeans made up to make their own history and their own navigation sound really cool. But we're taught the facts in our schools, bro.
Samoans, Tahitians, Tongans, Maori, Hawaiians, and many others live in the Polynesian tribe.
Fijians, there's from the Easter Islands. You know what I mean? You got the Rarotongans here, you got the Cook Island Māoris, you've got the Niueans, there's a whole bunch.
Samoans, Tahitians, Tongans, Maori, Hawaiians, and many others live in the Polynesian Triangle, even though Polynesian Elbow is probably a bit more accurate. This triangle stretches from Hawaii in the north to New Zealand in the south and to Rapa Nui in the east.
But I'm New Zealand.
The currently accepted origin of the Polynesians is Rapa Nui in the east.
There you go, Rapa Nui, Easter Islands.
The currently accepted origin of the Polynesians is that they came out of Taiwan, then moved through Southeast Asia and Melanesia into Polynesia around 3000 to 1000 BC. But the exact roots and dates are still debated. The debate around the origins of the Polynesians was especially heated a few decades ago, which prompted Thor.
Like, you're talking, we left the mainland 3000 BC, over 3000 years ago.
Hyrules to propose an interesting theory. The incredibly named Thor Hyrules was a Norwegian adventurer. In the mid-20th century, he proposed that the Polynesian origin lay in America rather than in Asia. His theory rested on the fact that the winds and currents made it easier to travel from east to west in the Pacific. Polynesian experts informed Hyrules that the linguistic, genetic, and archaeological evidence all pointed towards Asia, and that he definitely should not build a raft and attempt to drift from Peru to Polynesia.
Now this is the thing, bro. The historians are still in debate about where my people come from. We still don't know, bro. So that's why he's saying this, because there's still debate about where we actually come from. We don't actually know that we come from Taiwan. Like he just said, it's a guess that we came from Taiwan. That's only a guess because of currents and shit. You know what I mean? Both of these people that are guessing where we come from are only just throwing out guesses. You know what I mean?
All pointed towards Asia, and that he definitely should not build a raft and attempt to drift from Peru to Polynesia. Thor built a raft and attempted to drift from Peru to Polynesia on the 28th of April, 1947. After a harrowing 100-day journey, he and his crew made landfall in Mayoria Reef on the 7th of August, proving that it was in fact possible.
Yo, and that isn't even long, bro. 100 days? That's 3.5 months, bro. That's only 3 months. That's quick, bro. That's 3 months to travel with a sail from Peru to New Zealand. That's 2/3 of the globe, bro.
For someone to drift from America to
Now,
Polynesia.
think about 3,000 years ago. That was a quick journey. That's a really fast journey when you think 3,000 years back, bro.
All the other evidence still pointed towards Asia. Some years later, Andrew Sharp theorized that the Polynesians had settled all of their islands with accidental drift voyages. A rebuttal to Sharp's thesis came in the form of an emerging technology:
Some
computers.
bullshit. That's some
In
bullshit.
1973, Michael Levinson, Gerard Ward,
They're trying to say that we colonized the whole Pacific Ocean. Remember, 1/3 of the world by accident. We just drifted out into the ocean and just went, hey, fuck it, wherever we land is where we're gonna land. Boom. Hey, look, here's an island. Hey, let's push off and go somewhere else. Let's just see where we end up. Bang. Hey, look, another island. Bro, do you know what the chances of that are? Psh, get out of here. That's some bullshit.
computers. In 1973, Michael Levinson, Gerard Ward, and John W. Webb ran over 100,000 simulations of potential Polynesian drift voyages. They proved that drifting was near impossible.
Exactly.
And none of these simulated voyages managed to reach Hawaii.
Exactly.
This meant one thing. The Polynesians intended to land and settle where they did. So, if intentional sailing is the only way Polynesians could have spread out, then how on earth did they do it?
Because we're the
Journey out of
shit.
Asia happened in
Because we're the shit.
small boats and outrigger canoes, which are canoes with a second smaller
We call them waka. It's called a waka.
hull for increased stability. But for crossing the massive distances in
W-A-K-A,
remote Oceania,
waka.
something new was needed. Enter
Double. Enter the double waka. Like a catamaran. Facts.
in remote Oceania, something new was needed. Enter the double-hulled canoe, in which the outrigger was replaced by a second, similarly sized hull. A wooden deck was then constructed between the hulls to allow the canoes to carry more
They're missing the little whare that we had on top of these little storehouses and little shelters on here. They're missing.
crew and supplies. These hulls were either dug out of massive tree trunks
Cody
using
trees.
tools called adze, or
Made out of
constructed
Cody
from
trees.
planks attached with
Made out of the world's biggest and strongest wood, the Cody tree. Only grown here in New Zealand, my nigga.
coconut fibre ropes and sealed with sap from the
Fibre
breadfruit tree.
made out of New Zealand flax. Harakiki.
I think it's now time to consider the coconut. The ship sails, coconut leaves. The 300 meters of rope on board, coconut fibers. The drinks, coconut water. No coconut, no voyaging. This
Facts, sir.
simple crop was essential. Now, coconuts and canoes are impressive, but how do they discover and remember the locations of hundreds of remote islands without a compass or written language? The exact
That's something else I forgot to say. We never had a written language. Remember that. We never had written script.
designs of the canoes, the locations of the islands, and the secrets of navigation were entirely passed down through oral tradition, usually song.
Songs. Why?
In order to
So, there's another thing, bro. I was raised culturally, right? I spoke Maori before I spoke English, and all of that. I went to Maori schools and stuff like that growing up. You know what I mean? Where I learned how traditional ways and stuff like that. Learning how to carve, learning how to weave, flax, coconut fibers, stuff like that, bro. Learning all of that kind of stuff. This is how I was raised. So none of this is new to me, but it's dope to be able to share it with the squad, bro. So you get to know a little bit more about my people, bro. You know what I mean?
be passed down through oral tradition, usually song.
And that was one thing that we did a lot of at school. Waiata, song. A lot, bro. Because we, like I said, Māori didn't have a written script. Polynesians didn't have a written script. We passed on our things through waiata and stories. You know what I mean?
In order to find a
you know,
direction
prayers and
of
stuff.
the endless ocean, Polynesian navigators had to maintain a constant mental map of where they were
Stars.
in relation to the stars in the sky. This star compass divided the sky into
Usually we use the North and South Star, Southern Cross, things like that.
32 houses, and by watching these stars along with the rising and setting sun, the navigators could maintain their course with certainty. And if the stars couldn't be seen, a navigator would read the ocean. The way in which an ocean swell rocked the boat indicated where they were, and if they could orient their ship with the desired ocean swell, then they knew exactly where they were going to go. Following the flight paths of nesting birds, watching for clouds over islands, and by looking for the reflections of lagoons in the clouds, a navigator could figure out if a land was nearby. Finally, they used the survival sailing strategy, which is where Thor comes back into the mix. As shown earlier, the currents and winds made it easier to drift from America to Oceania. Now, this doesn't prove that the Americans settled Polynesia though. It instead shows us how Polynesians felt safe sailing off into the unknown. They could sail against this current for as long as they could in search of land, and if none could be found before supplies ran out, then they allowed the currents to bring them back at a much quicker pace. These theories and discoveries were all tested in 1976 by a 19-meter long replica of the ancient Polynesian.
Hukulea.
voyaging canoe, named the Hukulea. At the time, indigenous Pacific culture was near extinction, especially in places like Hawaii. There were less than a dozen master navigators left, none of them in Polynesia.
Yo, what? Less than a dozen of our traditional navigators left in Hawaii, bro. There's thousands in New Zealand. My dad, for instance, my grandfather, my uncles, like they're all navigators, bro. Like, you gotta remember, we're an island nation. We're very cultural, traditional, and when even me, when I go out diving, because I dive for seafood and stuff like that. So when I go out diving and stuff, I still do my karakias and stuff to our god of the sea, Tangaroa, stuff like that. I still dive with the same tools that my ancestors dive with. A lot of people these days, they use diving knives and stuff like that. I don't use knives, you know what I mean? I use a wooden, kind of like a chisel, but made out of wood that we used to use back in the day. Things like that, bro, you know what I mean?
The people behind the Hukulea,
So that's sad to
especially
me.
in places like Hawaii. There were less than a dozen master navigators left, none of them in Polynesia. The people
So,
behind
good thing is, if I'm stuck on a boat out at sea, I know the North and South Star, and I know New Zealand currents. You know what I mean? I know the New Zealand currents. These are things that Māori kids got taught as children. You know what I mean? Like, all of that. If you meet a New Zealand Māori who doesn't know much about the ocean, then, damn, that's rare. Damn, that's rare. I haven't. I'm 39, and I haven't met any natives from New Zealand that don't know how to use the ocean using the stars and currents. You know what I mean?
the Hukulea wanted to sail in the traditional Polynesian way. And to do that, they had to reach out to Mao Pialag, a master navigator from Satawal in Micronesia. Mao was passionate about preserving his culture and making sure it survived into the modern day. He agreed to come aboard and navigate for the Hawaiians. They sailed from Hawaii 4,226 kilometers to Tahiti using only traditional methods. Upon their arrival, the crew of the Hukulea were greeted in Tahiti's harbour by over half the island's population.
Solid.
17,000 people gathered in that harbour to watch
Solid, bro. I didn't know that. That's cool.
the Hukulea were greeted in Tahiti's harbour by over half the island's population. 17,000 people gathered in that harbour to watch their culture undergo a rebirth. The culture of Polynesian wayfinding, thought dead for centuries.
So I live here with the arrows right there. Alright? I was born and raised here with the arrows. Like, that's where I lived most of my life. Alright? I spent my childhood, so I was born here. And then I moved up to here as a baby. Alright? I can't even remember moving, that's how young I was. I moved up to here, I went to school here. Really cultural and traditional places, right? Rural, very rural area. And then from here, I moved back. And now I live here. So, I mean, I've lived up here in Auckland, I've lived all over New Zealand. You know what I mean?
Reawakened by the
And I've lived, if I move my camera, I've lived around here in Australia, right here in the middle of Australia. And shout out to my sons. You know I love you. They live up here. And my daughters live with me. Kind of shit.
tiny crew aboard the Hukulea. Soon the Hukulea would go on more voyages to New Zealand, to Rapa Nui, and even complete a circumnavigation of the world, along with igniting a cultural renaissance in the Pacific.
How dope is that, bro? The Hukulea, the Hukulea Waka did the trip around the world using only traditional, so using the stars and the currents. No oars, no nothing. Just that, you know what I mean? And only taking on board traditional foods. Remember, they didn't take on board any other kind of foods, just traditional foods.
These voyages, along with Mao's navigational knowledge, proved that the ancient Polynesians were capable of long-distance voyaging using their own methods. The advances in our knowledge about Polynesian navigation, along with archaeology and experimental archaeology like the Hukulea, flipped Thor Hyrules theory on its head. It now seems more likely that the Polynesians were the ones that reached America.
Did you hear that? And now it seems like the Polynesians were the ones that first reached America.
That the Polynesians were the ones that reached America. And this is where the potato enters our story.
Now, I learned during school about from this point on. I didn't really know too much about the bits before this. I knew the traditional stuff, like how we use the stars in the ocean, things like that. But this is what we get taught in school, how we come across the sweet potato, because everyone knows that we call it kumara. So everyone knows that kumara is not native to New Zealand. So we always wondered where we got it from, and we've been taught through school how they came about.
The sweet potato is an American crop going back thousands of years. It would not be introduced to Eurasia until after the voyages of Columbus, but it had been central to the Polynesian diet for much longer.
Facts.
The discovery and dating of carbonized sweet potato tubers on the Southern Cross Islands are evidence that the sweet potato was in Polynesia no later than the end of the 14th century AD, which is before European contact. There are also samples of sweet potatoes radiocarbon dated to the pre-contact period in Hawaii and New Zealand. So, given that the Polynesians reached Rapa Nui and the during the period between 900 AD and 1100 AD, they were undergoing rapid expansion, it isn't too far-fetched to assume that they may have reached Peru. Trade isn't too...
Think about it. Think about it. If we've come all across here, right, this is where we are here in New Zealand, if we've come all across here, what's to say we didn't go that extra little bit? Because that ain't shit compared to how far we travelled. You know what I mean? That would be considered today as like doing a fucking 4-hour, 5-hour drive to a neighbouring country in Europe. You know what I mean? That little journey there. So who's, you know what I'm saying?
1100 AD, they were undergoing rapid expansion. It isn't too far-fetched to assume that they may have reached Peru, traded with the natives there, and then brought back some of those crops. Especially after Thor proved how easy it was to return from Peru to Polynesia. Along with this physical evidence,
video.
There's also some...
I love this video. I'm going to save this video. I love this video. I'm going to save this video. Because if you're a loyal subscriber, hey yo, Mr. Dan, I know you're watching, my nigga. I know Mr. Dan's watching. Kamal will probably be watching. Sorry about that. Y'all can hear my dogs in the background. I think my Uber Eats is turned up. And speaking of Uber Eats, I've got hangi. I've got a hangi for tea. Hangi is traditional Māori food. There'd be sweet potato in it.
Linguistic evidence. The word for sweet potato in Quechua is kumar. Across Polynesia, the word
hey yo, what?
for sweet potato in Quechua is kumar.
I didn't know that. Yo, I didn't know that. This makes the ultimate sense. So, damn, the indigenous name in the Andes for sweet potato is kuma. And what did you hear me just call it? Kumara. Spelled exactly the same, just another A on the end. Yo, this is making way more sense. Now, hold on. Across
Polynesia, the word for sweet potato is oddly similar, with kumara and kumala being the most common. The bottle gourd, a vital part of Uruguayan and Argentinian life, also seems to have made its way across the Pacific and into Polynesian life, pre-European contact.
Nah, that's proof, bro. That's proof, bro. That's solid proof. I think that's solid proof, bro. If the only place that this sweet potato is native to is America, and we had it here prior to the British even coming here and finding us, then somewhere there had to be communication, right? We either went there or they came here. Now, because none of the tribes or none of the peoples from America were sea navigators, it only makes sense that we went there. Bam.
Together with this physical and linguistic evidence, there is also a
Facts,
tiny amount of genetic evidence. Authors of a genetic study published in the journal Current Biology found that it wasn't only Polynesians that inhabited Rapa Nui. Anna Sappho Malaspinus, a geneticist at the Center for Geogenetics at the University of Copenhagen, stated, "We found evidence of gene flow between this population and the Native American populations, suggesting an ancient ocean migration route between Polynesia and the Americas."
No way, bro. No way. Cause damn, hold up. Let's just keep going, yo.
Genetic data from 27 of the island's Polynesian inhabitants showed interbreeding with South American natives somewhere between 1300 and 1500. The growing consensus among experts on Polynesia.
That's before we came to New Zealand. That was when my people were still colonizing the islands. We hadn't even come here then. We came here 1300 BC or 1200 BC. He's saying in 1500 BC, my people, the Polynesians, were getting their booty off the American Indians. Which might explain why the American Indians and my people, the Maori, have so many words that are the same.
Is that they contacted Americans before Columbus. They had the technology, breeding with South American natives somewhere between 1300 and 1500. The growing consensus among experts on Polynesia.
Actually, that was around the time we came to New Zealand, 1300 BC. Yes, so that was around the time we found New Zealand at that time. So, damn, that's crazy.
Is that they contacted Americans before Columbus. They had the technology, the ability, and the will to cross the Pacific with ease. Right now, all we're waiting for is incontrovertible evidence to appear. Because even the potato isn't enough to absolutely prove contact. However, the story of the Polynesians is an incredible one.
That's Maui. He's got a little cartoon picture of Maui down here. He's a demigod. He's a dude I talk about. He had the same tasks as Hercules and stuff like that. He was like, you know what I mean? He was our version of Hercules.
Powered by the human spirit for discovery and adventure, populated over 1,000 islands, and created Earth's largest nation, covering some
created Earth's largest nation, my nigga. You hear that?
41 million square kilometers of ocean, during a period where European and Asian sailors were hugging the coastlines. When Captain Cook first entered their realm, he asked, "How shall we account for this nation spreading itself so far over the vast ocean?" The hard work of Mao, the Polynesians, and an array of scientists and archaeologists has in recent years answered this question, and it's only a matter of time until the American question is answered as well. Thank you for watching this video. It is part of the fantastic Operation Odysseus collaboration.
Yo, thank y'all niggas for tapping in, bro. Thanks for wanting to know a little bit about my people, man. That was dope. I learned a little bit more than I knew. You know what I mean? I learned a little bit more than I knew. Yo, get that up on screen, man. Okay? I learned a little bit more than what I originally knew. You know what I mean? And for me, this was pretty much just as educational as it would have been for you guys. So, yo, That was dope. Thanks for tapping in, everyone, yo. Thanks for all the support. I appreciate it, bro. If there's any more other videos you want me to do, bro, I'll do some videos on the Vikings and shit. I'm all about that shit. You know what I mean? Send them in, bro. Drop them in the comment section. Stay safe, stay dangerous. We out. Peace.